Alright guys, in today's video I'm going to be giving my final review on Death Stranding, and this will be a spoiler-free review. I'm sure a lot of you noticed I put out a video yesterday talking about the ending of Death Stranding, which was obviously very spoiler-filled. That video didn't do too well, at least compared to my other Death Stranding videos, and I can only assume that's because many of you have not yet completed Death Stranding, which I do not blame you. It is a game that you want to take your time with, and it is a very long game to complete, and it's also very easy to get distracted in that game to where you maybe aren't progressing towards the main storyline anymore. You're doing a bunch of side activities, and before you know it, you're 50, 60, 70 hours deep, and you still have half the story to go through yet. So I noticed that a lot of you were asking me to do my spoiler-free review, and that is exactly what I'm going to do in this video today. I did complete the game. I have about 55 to 60 hours into it. I didn't do too much of the side content because I really just wanted to stick to the golden path and stick to the story path, and then I figured I could go back and do all of the extra side content if I'm interested in doing so now that I've beaten the main story of the game. So I'm going to do my best to avoid any spoilers in this video, and the gameplay you're seeing in the background is a boss battle, but it is one that we've already known about. It was showed off in earlier trailers a while ago, so you don't have to worry about that. But what I want to do is just talk about my overall experience with the amount of time I put into this game. I've talked a lot about Death Stranding here on the channel, and I'm sure that a lot of you are wondering, well, now that you have 50 to 60 hours into the game and you've completed it, what are your thoughts on it? Well, I can say this. My experience so far with Death Stranding has been a very positive one. But here's the thing. It has not been a perfect experience. It is not a perfect game. There are actually many areas of the game where I can certainly see why a lot of people could play it and get to certain sections and be like, you know, this isn't really doing it for me. But I can only really speak for myself, and one thing I do have to point out here in the beginning of this video is something I do not understand is how anybody could complete this game, talking about people who already reviewed the game. We know how polarizing the review scores for this game were and still are, and I don't understand how anybody could put 50, 60 hours, 70 hours, because these are, this is the time requirement that you need to put into the game to actually see it through. I don't know how anybody could do that and walk away feeling like, yeah, this is a 5 out of 10 game, this is a 4 out of 10 game, or even a 6 out of 10 game. I just don't get that, because for me personally, there was a lot of things here that were really great, really well done, and ultimately really rewarding and satisfying. I could understand the criticisms of people saying the game can feel tedious at times. Yes, that is very true. There are moments in this game, no matter what, where the pacing is off. You are walking from point A to point B, and there's not much going on, and there's just you, the environment, and potentially a soundtrack playing in the background, which this game has a phenomenal soundtrack. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. And there's these moments where, yeah, it's not perfect. There's no action, and it can feel a little bit like, okay, I need to try to just hurry up and get through this so I can progress the story. But there's also just as many moments where it is the literal opposite of that. There's a lot of moments where you think it's just going to be a simple, I'm going to go from point A to point B so I can watch the next cutscene and figure out what's going to happen next. But it's not that simple. It doesn't go down the way you think it's going to go down. You may encounter certain terrain that really just gets in your way to the point where you're like, how am I going to get over this? And you really start to pray and hope you get lucky that somebody else who already completed this section left something behind for you that you can use to your advantage. And more often than not, you'll find, as long as you're playing online, that there will be something there that does help you. And it's those moments of relief that really, I don't know, for me it's that satisfying feeling like I did it. Even just getting, like, in certain areas, even just moving 100 feet forward is a huge accomplishment. And so you have that dynamic mixed in with the fact that you don't want to damage your cargo. You want to try to get the best rating you can. You want to do the best you can, so there's always that in the back of your mind. You also have to manage your inventory, which, again, these are all things that do present a somewhat stressful challenge. And then you have these moments where there's BTs. You have these moments where there's terrorists or mules, right? And you have to worry about how you're going to get through without them taking all of your cargo, potentially, ending you or anything like that. And these are the moments that, in my opinion, end up feeling the most rewarding. And as you get later into the game, I do not think this is spoiler territory. I will say that I noticed a lot of people who reviewed this game and were under the embargo. It seemed like Sony did not want them to talk too much about the later aspects of the game. And I'm assuming they did this because they didn't want people to accidentally spoil some major things. Totally understandable. And I want you to know that what I'm going to tell you here, I don't think is a spoiler, especially considering how long the game's been out. What I'm going to tell you is that the combat in this game, because this is something I did not hear many reviewers talking about, really starts to open up the further you get in Death Stranding. And this was the most surprising thing to me because I wasn't expecting that. I knew you were going to get more weapons and things were going to upgrade, but I was actually a little bit surprised at just how many weapons you end up getting and how frequently you may end up having to use those weapons. And in traditional Hideo Kojima form, he gives you the option between lethal and non-lethal, although there are some weapons and equipment that are only lethal, so you always have to keep that in mind. Anybody you take out in this game, any human you take out, if you don't dispose of their bodies properly, they will turn into BTs. And as you get further in the game, you'll find that you start to encounter BTs and different variations of BTs more frequently, and when this happens, you really start to understand that the combat really fleshes itself out. It really opens up. And there are boss battles, which, again, I'm not going to spoil in this video other than the ones we already know about. And I will say that when it comes to the boss battles, they're kind of hit or miss. And I say that because it really depends on your expectation going into it. If you're expecting the most intricate, intense boss battles that you're ever going to experience, that is not what you're going to get with the boss battles in Death Stranding. But if you go into it knowing that this game is not really a combat-first game, then you find it much more easily forgivable because you realize that this stuff does add to the game. The combat sections with certain boss battles does add to the game, and it does change the pace up a little bit, right? Or significantly in some ways, and it really adds this layer of depth. But again, if you're looking for that really intricate combat experience and some of the most intense boss battles you've ever experienced, you're not going to get that here. I would say that the boss battles in this game, save for maybe one in particular, which I won't spoil, I will say they're mainly for the spectacle, and they're creating it creates a sense of scale in the game. I would say it tries to replicate that Metal Gear Solid feel when you're facing the Metal Gear itself, and it really makes you feel like you're underpowered, but you do have the tools at your disposal to take care of it relatively efficiently as long as you're paying half attention to what you're doing. I'd say if I had to describe the boss battles, that's exactly what they are. They're mainly for spectacle. They do keep you engaged, but it is worth noting that I did not play this game on hard difficulty. I am just playing it on the base normal difficulty, so maybe it opens up a lot more, or these boss battles do become much more intricate, which I'm sure they do if you're playing it on a harder difficulty. It's just that I can't speak to that. And so overall, after 50 to 60 hours of playing this game, it is not a perfect game, and I think that the Metacritic score is fair, if I'm being honest. I don't know what it's at now. I think it's at like maybe an 83 or 84 or whatever, maybe an 82. I haven't been paying attention to it. What I'm trying to say is I understand why, after completing this game, there are just some people where this game is not going to land for them. And in my opinion, this is the epitome of a Hideo Kojima game, where you either love his work or you just can't stand his work. There's really not much of a middle ground here. Me personally, I loved Death Stranding. I thought it was a fantastic experience. I thought it was a very unique experience. And I will admit that going into it, even though my expectations were through the roof, hearing some of the things that people had to say about the gameplay and how they didn't enjoy it and it wasn't satisfying for them, it got me a little bit nervous going into it that, am I going to end up feeling the same way when it's all said and done? And luckily, that's not the case at all. again, it was not perfect. I had my moments of frustration. I had my moments where I'm like, okay, this is dragging out a little bit too long. I had my moments where the story became a little bit cringy, but again, that is part of the Hideo Kojima package. It's kind of there to make you laugh in a way, but it's just this total experience where you're either in it or you're not. And I totally am fine with the idea of a lot of people looking at this and being like, I'm not in this, and I don't want to be in this. But I also think that there are a lot of people who did give this game a chance, who realize that this is not going to be your everyday run-of-the-mill gaming experience in terms of gameplay and story. And as long as you go into it with an open mind, I think that you'll find that there's something there. And with Death Stranding, the most significant thing I can say about it, and I guess this is where I will end my review, is that there is a sense of reward. There is a sense of accomplishment. But that sense of reward and accomplishment is sometimes interfered with by I guess we could say bad pacing, and that is just the nature of the game. And as long as you can get over that, if you don't see that as a problem, if you're okay with knowing that there's going to be many moments within this game where it's very slow, it's almost like a meditative like experience, and you're just going to be kind of walking from point A to point B and just taking in everything, then you're going to have a good time. If you're somebody who's going into this expecting to be able to rush through it, not take your time, not plan things out, not pay very close attention to your environment and the details and the management system, then you're just simply not going to have a good time. And I think that there are a lot of people who were not expecting the game to be anything other than that, just something you can jump into and experience and not have to put too much thought into. And I think that these are the people who were let down more than anybody else. But I really enjoyed my time with the game. The story was, in my opinion, something special. I'm not going to spoil anything in this, but when it comes to my main motivation for wanting to continue the game, I will say this game would not be able to stand up on its own without the story. And I think that's just kind of obvious. But for me, the story was very, very significant to the point where it was the main payoff that I was looking for, especially towards the very end and the last few chapters. It really kind of helped pay everything off, and it made me feel like any time in this game I felt like I was frustrated or I was struggling or I was having a difficult time, this made up for it and then some. And I think that that's where this is one of those games where I'm not saying that to make it seem as though it makes up for the lack of gameplay, because it's not. I did enjoy the gameplay, but there's no getting around the fact that this gameplay, the nature of it, is it can be frustrating. It can be difficult. It can feel tedious, but that's just part of it. And for me, the story was really the driving force between me feeling like, okay, I'm willing to take my time, learn these mechanics inside and out, and really just kind of learn how to traverse this world properly. And it did get to a point where eventually I felt excited about going on a new delivery run. No matter how simple or complex it may have seemed at the time, I was always excited to take on that new delivery run. So I'm starting to ramble at this point, but overall, I enjoyed the game, guys. It was very good. It lived up to my expectations in almost every area. I will admit, if I had to give the number one flaw with this game, it's not the gameplay, it's not the story. I'd say it's probably the pacing. And there are times where you just feel like things are being dragged out a little bit too much, but that is just the nature of the gameplay itself. But that's probably my biggest negative point. But everything else I really enjoyed, and I just had to take some time here to let you guys know in a spoiler-free way, how I feel after finally completing Death Stranding. And it is a very unique, a very interesting experience. It's not something I've ever experienced in a video game before, and I have a feeling it's not something I'm going to experience in a video game anytime soon. So yeah, at this point I'm going to ask you guys to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Did you complete Death Stranding? If so, let me know your thoughts on it. How far are you in it if you haven't completed it, and what are your thoughts on it? Try not to spoil anything. I will be looking out for spoilers in the comments, and I will be removing them if they're there. This is supposed to be a spoiler-free video. So leave your feedback down below. Leave the video a like if you did enjoy it. Really helps out. Lets me know you guys enjoy the content. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.